The Ben Garcia Show. Yeah. Best show in the land. Yup. Listen. Come and get your information from Ben Garcia. Get the latest on your quarterback, running backs, and receivers. Tune in, so any other show you don't need them. Any news that he giving out, please just believe him. Giving out the latest prediction and top-notch analysis. Wanna hear the truth, better have thick skin like callus. The latest move that your team just made can be damaging. The dudes ain't speaking no facts, they just be rambling. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show, go get the cameraman. Yeah. Lights, camera, action, turn on the show, go get the cameraman.
What is up? Welcome in to yet another edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making us a part of your day. However you are following, however you are watching, however you are listening, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, for free on the iHeartRadio app, or you're putting a face to the voice and you're watching on YouTube. We are closing in on 1,000 subscribers, so don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend, or keep the Ben Garcia Show all to yourself. But either way, however you listen, however you consume, thank you for continuously making us a part of your week. Jam-packed show for you guys today. Conference Championship Sunday is in the books. We're going to dissect into all four teams, what it means if they're advancing with the win, what it means if they've been eliminated with a loss over this past weekend. We're going to talk some Lamar Jackson. What is his legacy stand now in the NFL in the eyes of the fans, in the eyes of the NFL media? Let's talk a little bit about Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs advancing to the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes entering the GOAT conversation. We're going to talk about Dan Campbell, the Lions. What should they do? Where do they go from here? Who is at fault the most in that blunder of a Sunday night game? And then we are also going to talk about America's golden boy, Brock Purdy. So with all that being said, let's jump right into it. So the San Francisco 49ers are headed to the Super Bowl, led by Christian McCaffrey, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, and some stifling defense in the second half. And you are wondering why I left out a certain name in Brock Purdy. So let's talk about it. So San Francisco 49ers fans are demanding respect. They're demanding a pound of flesh if you have been critical, or you have been hypercritical, or you have had your jurisdictions about Brock Purdy. And I have always been one of those people who is upfront very critical. I'll admit when I'm wrong, and we'll get to where I was wrong in just a minute. But the San Francisco 49ers, make no mistake, they just took this game. The Lions lost this game. They did everything in their power to lose this game. It was at one point where, as soon as Dan Campbell, who we'll get to in later in the show, failed on that fourth down conversion, it was just all but over. Just a debacle of a call. And then the San Francisco 49ers, they took advantage. And to their credit, they completely took advantage. When an opportunity is there, you need to be able to seize it, and they did absolutely seize the opportunity. But make no mistake, for 5 quarters, first quarter, second quarter, third quarter of the divisional round, and the first quarter of the second quarter of the conference championship round, Brock Purdy was not only not good, he was bad. Brock Purdy was bad for 5 quarters of the 8 quarters he has played. He was pretty good in the fourth quarter, really late of that Packer game, and he was objectively fine in the third and fourth quarters of this game. So when people are telling me you got to demand the respect, he gets all the respect now. He's an elite quarterback, which there are absolutely people out there hounding the fact that he is a top 6, top 7, top 8 quarterback in the NFL. That's just not true. People are so quick to forget that Jimmy G led a roster that was lesser than this roster to the Super Bowl as well. My argument for Brock Purdy has never been that he sucks, has never been that he's a bad quarterback, has never been that he sucks in the NFL and that he's never... He's not good enough to be here. He shouldn't be here. My argument has always been he was Mr. Irrelevant for a reason. There's still 8 quarterbacks in the NFL I would take over Brock Purdy, and make no mistake about it, Kyle Shanahan, the San Francisco 49ers, know that there's about 8 quarterbacks they would take in the NFL. Hell, they almost took 46-year-old, 45-year-old Tom Brady to come back, then run it back with Brock Purdy this year. That's what they think of Brock Purdy. They don't think he's bad. They don't think he's amazing. They think he's somewhere in the middle tier. There's 8 to 9 quarterbacks that I would rather have on my team other than Brock Purdy. That's not a shot. That's not anyone coming after him. That's not unfair criticism. Brock Purdy is a good quarterback. And I've always said that. He's a fine, good, capable quarterback. I think he's better than Jimmy Garoppolo. How much better than Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't know. But when people point to they're in the Super Bowl, I demand respect, he's elite, Jimmy G did the same thing with a lesser roster. Jimmy G didn't have CMC or Javarius Ward or Jawan Jennings on that team. He had a lesser than roster. Heck, if I'm not mistaken, Brandon Ayuk wasn't on that team. He had George Kittle, Deebo Samuel. But he didn't have the same roster that Brock Purdy had right now. A more older, veteran, aging Kyle Shanahan who has learned a few things. So ease up on the Brock Purdy's elite because they made the Super Bowl. Because let's just be fair. Let's just be completely fair. The Lions lost that game. The Lions were up 24-7. Brock Purdy for 5 quarters in the NFL playoffs out of 8 has not played well. Now here's where I was wrong. Here's where I was completely wrong about Brock Purdy. There's a resiliency and a dog mentality you need to have in this league. And Brock Purdy emulated all of that. To his credit, he took that game. He took that game, and I believed absolutely did manage it. Didn't have mind-boggling stats, 267 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. 40 of those yards came off of a helmet catch from Brandon Ayuk. But 2 straight weeks, Brock Purdy could have folded, could have had a lot of excuses to fold. People would have said, makes $900,000 this year, would have said he's Mr. Irrelevant, would have said that he lacks some of the tangibles that some of the better quarterbacks have. There's a dog mentality. Again, he's absolutely not Tom Brady, but there is a Tom Brady mentality to Brock Purdy when it gets really hard, when it's almost like he plays better with his back against the wall. Because for the first 2 quarters in this game, he was objectively awful. In the first 3 quarters of the Packers game, he was even worse. But when the lights were really bright, when he needed to make a play, he absolutely did. And Brock Purdy deserves all the credit for that. And that is something that you can't teach. That's a mental toughness. And that's a mental toughness that Brock Purdy has. He's shown that over the last 2 games. The first game, it wasn't a fluke. And the second game, when the tide started to turn, he turned along with it. So, although I don't think he's elite, there is a certain dog mentality with Brock Purdy that you do have to respect. A resiliency that you have to have in this league. And he had it. So, although I don't think he's elite, I still would take 6, 7, 8 quarterbacks over him. Are there 6, 7, 8 quarterbacks that have that same dog mentality he has? I'm not sure. I've seen quarterbacks that I think are better than Brock Purdy fold in those moments. Most notably, Lamar Jackson over the past week. Lamar Jackson was incredibly bad in that game. When it got tight, when teams started blitzing at him, turned into a complete otherworldly, different player that we had not seen before this season. He was really, really bad. So although I have my reservations about Brock Purdy, I cannot lie. There's a certain dog aura, resiliency to him that he's probably learned from being the last pick in the draft, for having not a ton of Division I scholarships, for going to Iowa State, and just absolutely making a name for himself. When everything is back against the wall, he steps up in the limelight. So although he has limitations physically, and I question the arm strength, and sometimes I question the accuracy, there is only 6 to 7, 8 quarterbacks that I would take over Brock Purdy. But the resiliency and the dog mentality from Brock Purdy cannot be overstated because it was impressive on Sunday night. And although the Lions were just complete buffoons in that game, Brock Purdy went in and he took it. And that's incredibly impressive. And it's a Super Bowl dog mentality you need to have. So even though I'll take the Chiefs coming up in the Super Bowl, it can't be overstated. And Brock Purdy proved a lot of people wrong in this sense. Dog, resiliency, and coming back when your back is against the wall means a lot in this league. And he certainly proved that. And I know it's so easy to label someone a hater that doesn't think the same way you do. And I will continue to be highly critical of Brock Purdy because I do see the limitations. But that doesn't mean I hate Brock Purdy. That doesn't mean I don't think he's a good quarterback. It's important to be honest with yourself about what you have so you can properly assess where your team can go. And I've never said Brock Purdy can't win a Super Bowl, and I've never said Jimmy G can't win a Super Bowl. I don't think they can, and I'd bet on Patrick Mahomes. But here's what I will say. If it comes down to Brock Purdy with 2 minutes to go and they need a touchdown or a field goal to score, he's done it multiple times this year, most notably last week against the Packers. This week, when he played uberly well in the second half against the Lions. And also earlier in the year when Jake Moody botched a field goal against the Cleveland Browns. He's got real limitations, but the dog and resiliency is there. And I don't hate Brock Purdy. I'm not rooting against Brock Purdy. I don't like to elevate players to the elite status because it brings down players that are actually elite, like Patrick Mahomes, like Josh Allen, like Joe Burrow. Don't elevate people that shouldn't be in the elite tier category because it diminishes the elite tier altogether. But resiliency, a dog mentality, and he was determined. So good for Brock Purdy, and we'll see what he does in the Super Bowl. Now let's talk some Baltimore Ravens and what happened in the conference championship game against the Kansas City Chiefs. I was one of those people. I picked the Ravens to win. I felt really good about it. And then by Sunday night, I was questioning why in the world would I ever go against Patrick Mahomes. I did. It was stupid, and I'll mention it in a different segment, but just real quick prequel to what I'll say later on about Patrick Mahomes. There's no chance ever again do I go up against Patrick Mahomes. The Ravens, what a pathetic effort they put on display against the Kansas City Chiefs on Sunday. 8 runs, 6 runs to their running backs. Completely abandoned the running game as a whole. This is a team who was one of the better rushing teams in the NFL. Completely abandoned what they wanted to do. People were upset with, I believe it was Will Compton, because he said on Barstool Sports, how do you beat Lamar Jackson? You make him pass. And that's absolutely true. Lamar Jackson's a good thrower of the football, and he's absolutely improved overthrowing the football in his last few years in the NFL, over his last 6 years in the NFL. But here's what I'll say. Lamar Jackson is not a beautiful thrower of the football. He's not one of the top 10 arm talents in this league. He's got a huge arm. He could launch it from end to end accurately, precisely. It's never been Lamar Jackson's game, and that's fine because Lamar Jackson has always hung himself on the I am the best athlete on the field. I'm the fastest. I might be one of the strongest. I'm the most agile, and I will get away from you. And it's always been, I will make something happen out of nothing. That's always been Lamar Jackson's MO. Make corners, make linebackers bite, and throw the ball just well enough, just precisely enough to get a huge 50-yard chunk gain. We saw that in the Zay Flowers touchdown. We saw that in the Zay Flowers 50-yard game before he inexplicably decided to be a good idea to taunt L'Jarius Sneed on the ground. So when people get upset with this notion of make Lamar Jackson pass, they're absolutely right. And what the Ravens did, John Harbaugh and Todd Monken, the OC, should be ashamed of themselves. They let Lamar Jackson down in this game. They allowed Lamar Jackson to turn to a pure pocket quarterback, and it was horrendous to watch. Lamar Jackson now, in the playoffs, has a 75 passer rating with 1,324 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. So through 6 games, passer rating of 75, 1,300 passing yards, 6 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. At this point, it's just been bad for Lamar Jackson all the way around. It has not been a very great start to his career in the playoffs. He's now 2-4. But at this point, we can blame John Harbaugh, who absolutely has a lot to blame. The game plan was not there. We could blame Todd Monken, the offensive coordinator. 8 rushes, 6 of them to actual running backs. What the heck are you doing during the week game playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, who are literally going to try and make Lamar Jackson a statue and to throw the ball? So although he wasn't supported, and they have tons of blame in this, let's shift over to Lamar Jackson. No one is a bigger fan of the Lamar Jackson fan club than me. I've been quoted before that he is one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, probably top 5, maybe top 4. I've said that I've never been more wrong on a quarterback, which was absolutely true. I never thought Lamar Jackson would work. I don't feel really dumb about that because there's a lot of people who thought the same way I did. But at this point, Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, it's a real thing here. He's starting to enter the Clayton Kershaw, the James Harden, the Russell Westbrook, the Peyton Manning for 12 years in the playoffs. A notorious playoff choker. If I'm going to give Dak Prescott the same blame that I give him each and every year, I got to be fair here. Lamar Jackson was really bad yesterday. And at this point, 6 touchdowns, a 6 interception, a passer rating of 72, that is not great for Lamar Jackson. In life, and this goes for anything, a job, a career, a college, a moment, an opportunity, you have to be ready to seize the moment. And for years it was, well, he doesn't have wide receivers. Well, his offensive line's a little shaky. Well, he's injured. Well, the defense. Well, the weapons. Whatever it was. The running backs are injured. J.K. Dobbins, Keaton Mitchell. For years, it was all these different excuses, and largely, I bought into them. I said Lamar Jackson is carrying this team. And for a long time, and even this year, he was. He's a tremendous leader, and he has a lot of tangibles that I like about, tangibles and intangibles that I like about Lamar Jackson. But in the playoffs, if I'm going to be hypercritical about Dak Prescott and his performance in the playoffs, I have to be hypercritical about Lamar Jackson in the playoffs. Lamar, call it what it is not a good playoff quarterback. He's an elite athlete. He's a 2-time MVP. But in life, you have to be ready to seize the moment, and this was the moment. The whole world was rooting for the Ravens and Lamar Jackson, continuously calling his number. This was the year he was supposed to step up. And he faded like tissue paper in a rainstorm. I mean, it was so bad. At one point, I was wondering if that was Tyler Huntley out there. Lamar Jackson has a completion percentage of just around 57% completion percentage in his career in the playoffs. These are bad numbers. Only one time has he had a passer rating of over 90 in the playoffs. In a span of a year. 2018, one and done. 2019, one and done. And at this point, Lamar Jackson has twice been the number 1 overall seed and hasn't made the Super Bowl. You only got to win 2 games at that point. A divisional and a conference championship game, and you're in the Super Bowl. This is a inexplicably horrible failure by Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. And they can spin it of they're just learning. They could spin it of they need more time. They can spin it any way. But at this time, Lamar Jackson is just a bad postseason quarterback. The numbers do not lie. And it even shows more now that if you blitz him, there's a blueprint out for Lamar Jackson. If you blitz Lamar Jackson and make him make precise reads, you will have the upper hand. You know, it's the difference between him and what I saw in Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy had a dog mentality. Brock Purdy was down 24-7. Now, did a ball bounce his way? More notably, did it bounce off someone's helmet and into someone's hand? Sure, you need a break. Sometimes it's better to be lucky than good. I will totally admit that. But 24-7 is a much greater lead than 17-7. And the body language, forcing the ball in the end zone, the interceptions, is a bad look for Lamar Jackson. That's a stain that I'm not sure he's going to get off his resume anytime now, anytime soon. And you look, this was the opportunity. The Chiefs are only going to get better. Josh Allen's going to come back with a vengeance. Joe Burrow will be back next year. So if Lamar Jackson's going to win a Super Bowl, when is it? Because all those guys are moving into their prime as well. Oh, and I didn't mention, CJ Stroud looks really freaking good. So if it wasn't now, when is it for Lamar Jackson? Hasn't shown he's a great playoff quarterback. And how much more help does he need? If there's other things missing, I understand he doesn't have the best wide receivers in the world, but Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, and Odell Beckham Jr. and Rashad Bateman is better than Marquez Valdez-Scantling, Rashid Rice, and Travis Kelce at this point in his career. So if it's not this year, when is it for Lamar? And that sucks for someone like me to say, who's been an advocate, number one stan of the Lamar Jackson fan club, but I have to be fair. The playoff numbers show it, and he's in this stratosphere with the Clayton Kershaws, the James Hardens, the Russell Westbrooks of the world, those guys that have superb regular seasons but melt down in the postseason. Real soul-searching for Lamar Jackson, the Baltimore Ravens. And I don't know if he's ever going to win a Super Bowl. And if I had to put money on it, I'd guess he probably wouldn't. Now let's take a few moments to talk about the blunder that was the Detroit Lions on Sunday night in the NFC Conference Championship game against San Francisco 49ers. Now, I predicted the Lions to win this game, and for all the reasons that came true in the first half was exactly why I picked the Lions. Their offensive line was understated. The defensive line of the San Francisco 49ers was way overstated. It was a lot of flash. It wasn't a lot of actually given results. It was more so the Lions were going to dominate. And I watched James Conner of the Arizona Cardinals carve up the 49ers for like 150 yards. Him and Kyler Murray in the backfield. So I knew that's a real vulnerability. Chase Young is not good. Javon Hargrave and Kinlaw and Eric Armstead, I guess, aren't good enough in the trenches to stop guys like David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, that real 1-2 punch. Amon-Ra St. Brown was flying all over the field. And I think Jared Goff is a really good pocket passer when he's not getting pressured. And those are for all the reasons why I picked the Detroit Lions. It was calculated, and it looked really smart for 2 quarters. And that brings me to this. I'm not going to blame anyone else for this loss. Josh Reynolds, Jahmyr Gibbs. For this loss, the only person I will blame is Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell, inexplicably, horrible time management, really bad play calling, and poor judgment. You go for it on 4th down there. That was the game. Up 24-10. You kick the field goal. You miss it. People live with it. But I've got buddies at that game telling me they were screaming for him to keep that offense on the field. They wanted to see the Lions. They knew what it was. They wanted to see the Lions go for it. Everyone did if you're a Niners fan. But at this point, that is a fireable offense. Don't give me the they shouldn't have been here talk. The they shouldn't have been here talk is good for the first round of the playoffs. It's good for the second round of the playoffs. After that, you need to win a championship. I'm an Arizona Diamondbacks fan. The Diamondbacks shouldn't have been in the World Series this year, and they lost the World Series. And immediately I said to myself, that was probably their best chance to win a World Series. That was probably their best chance to win a championship. They're not making it back to the World Series next year. You know how hard it is to win a championship in any one of these leagues? And now they're going to lose Ben Johnson. Dan Campbell is to blame for the Detroit Lions' loss. You can't have that. In life, I understand if you live by a motto, a saying, a faith, a life lesson, whatever it is. I don't care. But there's circumstances that are going to make you change how you feel about something in a split second and in a split moment. And you have to be ready to adapt or you will get steamrolled in this life. And Dan Campbell, all year, we're going to go for it. We're going to be aggressive. We're going to be aggressive to a fault. And that works for week 1 to week 18. But you thought Dan Campbell would learn after losing to the Cowboys by continuously going for it and not just kicking the PAT to end that game. I thought he'd learn right there. Okay, got a little too aggressive. This was a learning experience for us. Let's not make the same mistake twice in the playoffs. The Niners were just turning momentum. We're just getting everything to move their way. All they needed was a little push from Dan Campbell, and he went for it. And then dialing up a pass to your third best wide receiver, what in the world is going on right now? Dan Campbell didn't learn from his previous mistakes against the Dallas Cowboys earlier in the year when they lost. And that's a huge red flag in a coach. He said it himself. I'm happy he said it. I'm happy he was authentic. I'm happy he didn't lie to his team. This was their best chance to win a Super Bowl. It's not next year. If you told me I had to choose between predicting the Lions would be back in the conference championship game next year or they weren't going to make the playoffs, guess which one I would pick? I would lean towards they don't make the playoffs because they're going to lose Ben Johnson, because they're going to have a first-place schedule, and they're not sneaking up on anyone next year. And I'm just going to say it. I'm going to be honest with you. You're not going to like what I have to say, but I have a quick trigger finger, and I'm willing to adapt and change on the fly. I would fire Dan Campbell right now and promote Ben Johnson. I don't care what the players think. I don't care what the players, if they like him a ton. I don't care if they love his emotional self. I would hire Ben Johnson as the head coach like that. And let me ask you this. You think the Atlanta Falcons regret letting go of Kyle Shanahan and keeping Dan Quinn? I bet you they wish they would have fired Dan Quinn after that Super Bowl loss and hired Kyle Shanahan within. I bet you the Philadelphia Eagles wish they would have gotten rid of Nick Sirianni last year after the Super Bowl and kept Shane Steichen. Different circumstance, but I bet you they wish they would have done that. If I'm the Detroit Lions, this guy didn't learn from his mistake. He didn't adapt as a head coach, and he said it himself, it's going to be even harder next year. You think Jared Goff's going to be the same without Ben Johnson? I got news for you. He's not going to be. He's probably going to be worse, and you're going to have to give him an extension this offseason. I'd hire Ben Johnson in an instant to be the head coach. I'd get rid of Dan Campbell's ass tomorrow. You can't have that. You can't have a coach who doesn't learn from his mistakes. He is solely responsible for the loss of this game and then has the audacity to tell his team, yeah, this was probably our best chance when you were the one who ruined it. Completely boneheaded, meat-headed mistake and deserves all the criticism today for ruining a Super Bowl chance, opportunity, appearance for the city of Detroit and Detroit Lions fans everywhere. I would be pissed if I was a Lions fan. Not because you lost. You lose all the time. It's not about when you lose. It's not about who you lose to. It's about how you lose. 24-7 at halftime is a choke job worse than anyone else this go around in the conference championship games. So you can rah-rah, you can cry at the podium. I'd make a change. I'd hire Ben Johnson as the head coach. You can't have that. You can't have a coach who says after the game as well, I don't regret it. You don't regret it? That's insanity. Complete and utter insanity. And not only going for it once, but going for it twice. Putting your team in a deeper hole that the Niners went down and scored, boom, game over. You allow 27 straight unanswered points, there deserves to be heads to roll. And I can promise you that if the Lions allow Ben Johnson to go, like who knows, he probably will be gone by the time this is out, they will end up firing their head coach, Dan Campbell, in 2 to 3 years and say the same thing I just said about the Atlanta Falcons with Dan Quinn and Kyle Shanahan and the same thing about the Philadelphia Eagles with Shane Steichen and Nick Sirianni. They're going to wish they held on to Ben Johnson. They're going to wish they canned Dan Campbell weeks, years, months, decades ago. And I feel bad for Lions fans because they will not get back there. Zero chance to get back there next year. It's a different year, new teams every year. 50% of the NFL teams that made the playoffs the year prior don't make it the following year. You have to be willing to strike when the iron's hot. You have to be willing to seize the opportunity, and they did not do so. And Dan Campbell deserves every last bit of criticism for that. At what point are we all just going to collectively realize that this is Patrick Mahomes' NFL and everyone else is just living in it? I picked against the Kansas City Chiefs. I didn't pick against Patrick Mahomes. I was well aware what Patrick Mahomes was capable of, or so I thought. The Ravens had every single advantage in this game. Better weapons. I mean, at some points, the better running game. I understand Isaiah Pacheco is very good, but when you combine Lamar Jackson and Gus Edwards, you just expect that running game to be better. They had the better defense, statistically speaking, and if you just want to go name recognition, we could go pound for pound for all the elite defensive weapons that the Baltimore Ravens have. And somehow, some way, Patrick Mahomes still pulls it out. With Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who couldn't catch a cold earlier in the season, Rashee Rice, who's a rookie, Justin Watson, the backup tight end, and for some reason, Travis Kelce just reminds everyone that he's still an elite tight end and the best in the NFL still. That back shoulder throw, the first touchdown from the Kansas City Chiefs, you knew the game was over. There was not one point in this game did I think the Baltimore Ravens had a shot to win this game. Never won. After the first drive, a pathetic drive from the Baltimore Ravens, I knew the Kansas City Chiefs were not losing this game. And the public, myself, the wise guys, they all faded the Kansas City Chiefs. Patrick Mahomes, the greatest underdog against the spread in recent modern American sports betting. And we all just faded him. Never again will I ever go against Patrick Mahomes and his greatness. Never again. I know some people find Nick Wright of FS1 annoying, but he's absolutely right. And I find him incredibly entertaining. But some people find it annoying. The complete narcissism of the Kansas City Chiefs' belief in Patrick Mahomes, which is not so narcissism after all if they're always correct. And at this point, when do we start talking about Patrick Mahomes being the greatest quarterback of all time? I understand Tom Brady's got 7 Super Bowls, 6 or 7 Super Bowls. I believe 6 with the Patriots, 1 with the Bucs. That'd make it 7. And he did it oftentimes with guys like Chris Hogan, like Julian Edelman. These were not household names. Tom Brady made them household names. But if you remember correctly, those first 3 Super Bowls in the New England Patriots dynasty was not Tom Brady. Tom Brady was mostly a game manager, still finding his way in the NFL, although very effective. It was Bill Belichick in the defense, a different kind of NFL. This Kansas City Chiefs team is winning solely because of Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is 1 win shy of Peyton Manning's wins in the playoffs all time. And he's 28 years old. Peyton Manning has 1 more playoff win than Patrick Mahomes right now. And Patrick Mahomes is 28 years old. He's going to triple Peyton Manning by the time he's done. At some point, we have to talk about, is this guy already the greatest quarterback I've ever seen? Because I'll be honest with you, Patrick Mahomes, just to the eye test, is the greatest quarterback I've ever seen. I understand he doesn't have the production. I understand that it's going to take a really long time before people accept that fact. But just skill alone, arm talent, mobility, preciseness, and the way he's able to command a team, the intangibles and the tangibles, Patrick Mahomes is the greatest pound-for-pound quarterback that I've ever seen. And after this weekend, going into M&T Bank Stadium when the biggest criticism of Patrick Mahomes was that he wins too much, i.e. he never plays a road playoff game because he's always winning in the regular season, what does he do? Took complete control of the bullies that were the Baltimore Ravens. Bullied them. Bullied their kicker before the start of the game. At some point, we have to start talking about, is this dude the greatest quarterback of all time? Because although the production's not there, as of right now, he's the greatest quarterback of all time. Just from the eye test alone. 2 interceptions in his conference championship history. 14 touchdowns, I believe, in the conference championship. 13 touchdowns. That is unheard of stuff. Passer rating of 100 yesterday, a QBR of 91. And people will say, oh, he's turned into a game manager yesterday. I don't care what Patrick Mahomes' stat chart looked like or his passing arc looked like. If you win on the road and you already have 2 Super Bowls and 2 MVPs, and you go on the road to M&T Bank Stadium, a hostile environment with the worst team significantly, and beat the Baltimore Ravens, I don't care how you win. You could kick it to the dude off his helmet onto Travis Kelce's arms and score a touchdown. I do not care because you have stock in that I've already seen you do it. Patrick Mahomes in recent memory is the only quarterback that get paid a ton of money and still win Super Bowls with whoever the heck he puts around him. And at some point, we have to just come to the realization, this is the greatest quarterback we've ever seen. And then when you see the bookies, the odds makers, open the line at 2.5 towards the San Francisco 49ers, dude, what is going on? If you just rank the top 10 players in this Super Bowl matchup between the Niners and the Chiefs, I'm not so sure how many Chiefs would be on that list. Probably 3, Chris Jones, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes. The other 7, probably 49ers. But does Brock Purdy make that top 10 list? I don't think so. I think Brock Purdy's the 13th best player in this game. And so with the wide margin of quarterback play, Patrick Mahomes being the best player in this game, Brock Purdy being the 12th, 13th best player in this game, you're going to favor the 49ers? I seriously wonder if the odds makers are just computers and not people actually watching the game and saying, oh, that guy's a guy on a mission. That dude is a man on a mission. Because Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs are going to beat the San Francisco 49ers, and I'm worried it might be a bloodbath. That is how much pound of flesh Patrick Mahomes is coming for. And the San Francisco 49ers should be worried. Because this team has been doubted, has been an underdog, and believes in themselves. And they're led by the greatest quarterback of all time that I have ever seen just by the eye test. Patrick Mahomes. That is all I have for you guys today on this edition of the Ben Garcia Show. Thank you so much for making this a part of your day. However you're watching, however you're following, however you're listening, thank you so much for tuning in, whether it's on Spotify, Apple Podcasts for free, on the iHeartRadio app, or you want to like, share, subscribe because you put a face to the voice and you are watching on YouTube. Thank you so much for doing that as well. Quest to 1,000 subscribers. We're closing in on that mark, that milestone. Who knows? Maybe I do a giveaway at that point. I will be back with you guys next week to talk all things NFL, Super Bowl. Maybe we throw in some NBA storylines in there as the NFL season is winding down. Who knows what could happen? But what I will tell you is, kids, never bet against Patrick Mahomes. Don't be like me. Don't think he's actually going to fall off when he never actually is. And until next week, it's been the Ben Garcia Show.